The conversations and information provided are not intended to substitute professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment.
The opinions expressed are the speaker's own and do not reflect the view of Humana Military or the Department of Defense.
Welcome to the Operation Within podcast, where we talk about health and a deeper sense of well-being.
Operation Within is a collective initiative to optimize holistic health matters and nourish within community, within self, and within family.
Thank you for joining the conversation on Operation Within podcast. We are your hosts, Mel
and Marty, and our conversations are real, they're raw, and reflective.
These conversations offer meaningful dialogue on experiences within the military community, oriented to empower and strengthen health and vitality in our communities who serve.
We want to give a special thanks to Humana Military and our partners who have brought Operation Within to life.
Let's dive in.
We go. All right, everyone. So welcome back to another episode of the Operation Within podcast with Mel and Marty. We're back, folks. Hi, Mel.
Hi, we are back. It is the holidays, slower seasons.
It is. It's been a while since we've had a chance to chat and catch up, Mel. So how's it going?
Good. I know it's been like we were in a flow like all the time. And then, it's just one of those things. I feel like life cycles and patterns and busyness and then the space in between. So it's nice to be back together here.
Definitely. And it's we started this adventure about 6 months ago, and it's been going well. I mean, we've had a chance to interact with one another, get to know each other, and we've had some fantastic guests. And I don't know about you, but I just find myself, all these little notes these little nuggets that they've offered. I'm reflecting back, I'm thinking back. I'm on a road trip or whatever. I'm like, man, I remember that conversation we had with the doc or with Eric, from the food bank, or Kimberly from it. It's like they've all offered some just fantastic advice, and even the folks that I didn't get a chance to talk to, but the folks you spoke with, man, I'll tell you what, you had some awesome guests.
Seriously, it's been such a blessing, but also not a surprise in a way that we have such an incredible community around us. And it's when you invite people in to really share, the depth that is within people and their stories is just so empowering and so inspiring. And what you guys don't see is Marty does take notes during our episodes, and he does have like this journal where he like puts quotes down. It's so awesome. So he means it when he has those notes.
I do. And it's cool because you never know when a moment is going to come up, right? Or an engagement, and the quote or that comment or something is relevant to that discussion. And in that moment, you're like, hey, we can make an impact because I heard this from the doc or whoever. And it's like, hey, don't crowd your life. What does that mean? And it's like, oh, and then we go into the discussion of the podcast. It's great.
It's so true. I think too is like quotes the whole point of podcasting and this stuff anyways is like there's things that are said that just give a reframe or really resonate. And I think as people, we all feel so much, especially everything that's been going on these past 2 years and beyond. Life is life. But when you're feeling something and then somebody articulates it in such a organic and resonating way, it's almost healing in itself, right? So
I love it. So you guys didn't see this, but we just took a selfie while we're talking.
Took me off guard. I was like getting deep there.
We're taking a picture and just kind of, again, today's episode is a little bit different. And I think we're going to try something different, Mel. I don't know. Let's see what you think. But I think we should just go down memory lane a little bit, just kind of reflect on some of our guests. And for the audience, I think it's a good chance for you as well to kind of sit back and just reflect along with us to see what episodes, and if you haven't had a chance to, you can go back and check out our episodes. You can find it on Spotify. I know we have a link on Facebook and Instagram, and you can find us anywhere you can find a podcast. And our episodes, again, they're raw, they're reflective, and they're meant to just really just be real, and they're not, everything we do is unscripted. And I love that. That's probably the best part of this effort is we have no scripts. We literally come in here, kind of talk a little bit about what we're going to do, and then we just jump in and let experiences and kind of our knowledge of what we know about a subject, or using the expert that we're interviewing, kind of really set the tone and lead the discussion. And man, that's great. As a listener, right, as the audience, that's what I want. I don't want a scripted, okay, now we're going to do this. Okay, now we're going to do that. Now let's just get into it.
Well, so much of life is that way. And I think with social media and like there's so much over performance and under embodied aspects of this, like of any type of media, right? It's like we often lose the human aspect. And then we're comparing ourselves to these over prepared depictions or, presentations, when in our real lives, like we're just humans, and I think that the more it's like you can see that and consume things that are natural like that, it allows you to put that armor down that you have to be perfect or that you have to be something that you're not. And in a lot of ways, like if you over prepare for something, it's not even really you.
Yeah, it doesn't come across as natural. And again, and from the beginning, this whole effort is about holistic health, right?
Yeah.
The operation within, right? It's about holistic health, really trying to find ourselves, right, from within, right? Is how do we start healing? How do we start really taking charge and control of our lives, right? Is how do we find our joy, and I actually have a great story about joy, but I'll tell you later on in the conversation. Go.
Well, I was going to say is that we forget that this is our birthright, that breath, body, our free will and our thoughts, connection, like all of these aspects are in our nature. And the whole point when you think about holistic, right, it's looking at all the parts that make up the whole. And there's so many versions of yourself that make you who you are today. And many of our guests that have come on sharing different personal stories, oftentimes we can bury our stories or, it's like we go into avoidance over experiences that we've navigated. But there was so much wisdom yielded from the pain, so much wisdom yielded from the experience. And I often, like with my own students and my clients, we talk a lot about contrast, and that oftentimes you have to experience what you're not to know who you are. And so when you think about the part impacting the whole, it is like all these versions of ourselves from our past and even just this past year. It's like all of those little moments really make us up with like the way we are in today's, like in this moment, and that everything that you've experienced is what equips you for this moment.
Yeah. At the beginning of the year, we were out at Government Canyon, a group of us, right? Team Red, White, and Blue. We have our kind of a beginning of year. We went in and did some hiking, and I was out there with my daughters before she went back to school. I didn't know that there were dinosaur bones out at Government Canyon. Did you know that? I didn't.
Are they real dinosaur bones?
They are. They're actual real dinosaur bones. And they're in the rock. They're actually kind of roped off, right? So we went on a hike, and they're like, "Okay, those are the dinosaur bones." And I'm like, "Man, that's freaking cool!" Like the first thing the first hike of the year is we're out here with a bunch of veterans, and we're hiking up, Government Canyon. There's some great trails, by the way, and there's signs, there's mountain lions out here and some wild game. And I'm like, okay, I hope we don't get eaten out here. And the last thing I expected was to see dinosaur bones, right? And I'm thinking back, I'm a 47-year-old man, and I'm so fascinated by dinosaurs. I'm like, oh my God, I saw dinosaur bones. It's really cool. And it took me back to my childhood and all those little things. I'm like, man, that's really cool. I got to enjoy that with my daughter. And it's like, okay, so this was our start to the year. It's a great start. There was about 25, 30 people at this event. And I'm like, this is what I want this year to be about, is adventure, kind of just see, go out there and just experience things that I haven't experienced ever before, and just kind of take these moments as they come. And wouldn't you know, right, 6 months later, fast forward, we launch our first podcast. And here we are, we're recording with Mao, trying to get the intro, and we've never done this, right? And it's just, I don't know about you, but it's surreal to go from, I'm just hiking with my daughter and my veteran friends. Fast forward, have some fitness goals and some other goals. Never in my wildest dreams that I've ever experienced that I was going to be part of an effort like this, Operation Within, being on a podcast, interviewing guests, sharing experiences and sharing stories. I wasn't ready for that. I got to be honest, I wasn't ready for that. And I'm like, well, let's just jump in. Let's just go and let's see where it goes. and here we are now, man. And it's just been so surreal. I don't know how it's been for you.
Well, I think that what a beautiful example of like, I mean, just manifesting something, right? You're like adventure. And this year, this is what I'm moving into. And how when it's almost like when we ask for something, we'll never imagine the way it's going to show up, but the power of asking for what we want. And, you know, a big piece of moving into 2021 for me was stepping into deeper service. And I had shared before the episode that a year ago, I would have never imagined that the year would have unfolded the way the way it did, and that like what I'm doing in my life, like just so far away from what I thought a year ago. But it makes me think of that quote around that we are often living an answered prayer. Like what you're experiencing now was a prayer from years ago, or, you know, like just remembering that it unfolds with its own divine wisdom. And I mean, it's so cool. I love holding space and listening to people's stories. So this has been a gift for myself as well, and just learning so much from people who are passionate about holistic health and well-being, and seeing it through the eyes of different people, because holistic health is one of those words that I think everybody overuses, right? But that leads to all these different interpretations and ways that people relate to it. So it's been really fruitful.
So let's take a moment and let's reflect, right? Holiday season. I know quick story on the holiday season. So I just a couple of days ago, I think I don't know where I was at. I think I was in Virginia. I was picking up my daughter. I've traveled quite a bit. And anybody that follows me on social media knows that I'm always on a road trip, or I'm on a plane, I'm doing something. But a memory popped up, and it was my daughters are at, there's a hotel in Stone Mountain, just right outside of Atlanta, Georgia, if anybody's visited Stone Mountain. And they're in front of a fireplace, and it's got the Christmas tree and a nice little wreath, and it was taken in 2016. Well, in 2016, for the holidays, that was our last Christmas as a family while I was on active duty. We actually went and spent Christmas in a hotel for old time's sake, right? And we decorated the lamp with with lights, and we made it the Christmas tree. We put presents under the, and our girls are in high school, and one of them's already like going off to college. We're being goofy, right? We're like, hey, but this is, we wanted one more time because we knew we were going to retire from the military. And but who does that, right? Who goes to a hotel room, decorates a lamp like a Christmas tree? We all are wearing those pink bunny pajamas from A Christmas Story.
Oh, I love that.
Oh yeah, drinking coffee, sitting outside overlooking the lake. It was fantastic. Like that was, but that to me, that's the holidays for me. I reflect on those moments and time with family and friends, and sometimes it's not always positive. Sometimes it's stressful when you have to be with family or friends, or you have to kind of deal with real life issues, and that's okay. That's normal. That's I know it. Sometimes family stresses you out. We stress our family out too, because we're just so our mind and our body, we're just going a million miles an hour, and we're just trying to fit all these things into our day, and they're like, slow down.
I have an idea though, or
okay.
like something just came to me about how interesting it is that at the end of the year, all this kind of drama and stuff that we've been suppressing all year comes to the surface, right? And it's almost as though there is wisdom in December to move into January, so we clear all that it's like every year we have an opportunity to set boundaries and let go of what doesn't serve us anymore, to also be able to communicate the things that we've been holding in. It's almost like the holidays bring up so much for people because it's an invitation to let it go, or use it as curriculum to explore what does it feel like to say no to something, or to not do something out of obligation, or to go the extra mile because you really want to, right?
Yeah, and I think that's important, is that extra mile and just doing those. I remember, I know for me the holidays is it's kind of it's a double-edged sword. I really enjoy Thanksgiving holiday because it's about food, and I know food brings people together.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
When you break bread, that's probably when people let their guard down the most. And if you really, really want to get to know someone, have a meal with them. And I truly believe that. because it's really unscripted, right? Because everybody's is in their comfort zone. Everybody's just sharing, and so I love Thanksgiving. Christmas, and with the gifts, and sometimes it gets over commercialized, and it's like, okay, we got to buy a bunch of gifts, but the holiday Christmas to me is more than that. It's like it's time, and hey, I just made something for you. I didn't buy this awesome TV that's on sale, and I really want it. Because I'm guilty of that, because I like stuff like that too.
Well, the best gifts though are like one of the best gifts I've ever received. My little brother gave me a book by Paulo Coelho, which is my favorite author, like one of my favorite authors. And I don't know if he realized when he got me that book, if like, all right, maybe we talked about it. I don't know, but he gifted me this book, but he went through and wrote in it and like underlined, and like, I'm the type of person that give me stuff like that, or like those types of gifts that are so thoughtful. I mean, I just turn into a puddle of water, and I'm like, this is the best thing ever.
Yeah, but I think that's probably that is what the holiday season's all about, right? It's to really connect and really come together. But I tell you what, this entire year, especially these last 6 months, as we've been doing this podcast, man, it's kind of been Christmas like for 6 months straight. I mean, and I mean that every day, like we've been given something, we've experienced something new, or you get some awesome advice, because like the audience, I'm a veteran too, and I'm you're a veteran spouse, and or you're
active. He's active, but yeah.
But you're experiencing this, right? So we're both benefiting from this conversation as well. So I really, really, really have appreciated all of the discussion. So just so what have you kind of taken away from? So who has really, I don't know, maybe inspired you or lit a fire that wasn't there? Because you're already fired up. You're already super motivated. But who has really just hit you in the heart that you're like, man, that was really, really powerful. It doesn't have to be a speaker, but a moment. What in the last 6 months, what would you say has been kind of that moment for you? Like, wow, that was actually pretty cool.
So one of getting to interview Phil from Live American Yogi was really cool. Because I've just admired his journey for a while now, and being able to see, because over the years, I mean, since 2012 when I first started teaching yoga for the military, getting over the stigma, and to this day, fast forward, like recently I had the privilege to interview Chris Bolus, and that was awesome because he's an example of someone that really takes initiative with trying to serve and bring this stuff to personnel. But what I was going to say is, to this day, it's still hard when I show up to teach to break through stigma, because if you meet me in person, I'm 5 foot tall, and I'm very feminine and very flowery. I'm a poet. I mean, come on. But at the same time, like, bringing this to troops and really conveying it into their language, I'm able to do that. But the way I look sometimes, like, that doesn't be, also too, I'm not a service member. Yes, I'm married to a service member, but I have not served, so there's this a little bit of dissonance in that as well. So seeing people like Phil or like Chris who are really bringing this, people respect that, and they also like, it gives them something to comprehend it. Like, it's digestible. Okay, I can see this, big, strong guy, like, with this awesome military career who's into yoga and mindfulness and bringing this stuff forward. It's like trailblazing. Like, it's so awesome, and it's all relevant. Like, this is not a trend. I mean, it's all science oriented. It's all evidence based, what they're bringing to address stress reduction, trauma, or to reduce trauma, to increase mindfulness and self-regulation. So both of them were great, and especially Phil, because that was just awesome, our conversation. And then when Nigel was on, getting to talk about mental programming, because I don't think people ever think about the way they think. And it's like a fish thinking about the water it's swimming in. Like, we don't really do that. And the importance of being able to separate your over-identification with your thoughts and witnessing your thoughts, and then rather than being governed by your instinctual thoughts, but discerning. Like, how do you discern and be informed and take inquiry? I mean, this is a skill that everybody has the right to, but a lot of people don't utilize.
Wow, that's amazing. So, and I'm sure as being in that practice, and then how cool that you get to really engage with these folks that are in this discipline, right, and really learn more from them and kind of their thought process, and that's really, really cool. So for me, everybody's kind of blown my mind, right? Because this is something I never expected. So I've learned a lot from you, actually, and I know I don't want to make you cry, but I've learned a lot from you, and we're about 20 years apart in age, right?
Yeah.
But it's just your experiences and the way you find a way. You always find some positivity in everything we're doing and trying to find a lesson. And we both believe in aliens, so
yeah, it's true.
That is we're not conspiracy theorists, but we both believe in aliens. But true, you always find a way, and you always say you need to create that space, and you need to create that space. That stuck with me. Like, okay, I need to create space. I need to really, really just allow for things to happen or allow for healing to happen. And so that was a big takeaway for me. Is just listening to you, and I was like, man, you're so fired up. And it's like, you're published, and you're a mom, and you're a business owner. It's like, man, I wasn't doing that,
Thank you.
I was like, I wasn't doing any of that, by the time I was 30, I was trying to, make sure I wasn't going to jail or, stay alive.
I always say that I am old when I'm young, but I'll be young when I'm old. And, I appreciate that. And likewise, I think that there's so much, like, the world that I sit in, I'm a teacher trainer, so I train people to become yoga teachers. I live in the yoga, mind, body research stuff day in and day out. And it's so nice to be around grounded individuals because, as you guys have listened to the podcast episodes, I can sit in intellectual conversations until, like, I could forget days go by and just keep sitting in that space. And so I think that this was such a blessing to be able to be in this lighthearted co-hosting and this experience as well. So.
Absolutely. And that I love that as well, that it's serious, right? And there is a message to all of this, but I think we've been able to just kind of maintain that positivity and just be happy with what we're doing, even when we're sharing some very, very personal stories, because we've shared some moments and experiences. Our second episode, I mean, we jump right in and we're talking about suicide. And that's a serious thing. And again, even especially now during the holiday season, folks cope and deal with the holiday season in their own way. And sometimes not in a positive way. There's loss. Maybe, your parents aren't around anymore. They've passed away, or maybe you've experienced a divorce. You're living away from your kids, or maybe it's just like, hey man, I was in combat and I lost soldiers or sailors, airmen, Marines, or I may have lost my spouse. I'm a Gold Star family, and the holidays.
Well, and guilt. I think that the guilt aspect too for. In some cases for service members who've seen combat and just different situations, and recognizing that there is a realm of experiences around the holiday. And obviously, I'm big on reframe, and I'm also big on finding community. But the truth is that connecting with people who get that and feel that and being able to be supported and heard, that's nothing to be ashamed of by feeling different ways that you feel, because the more we resist what's coming up to the surface and we go into avoidance versus and again, I know it's hard because I can hear the rebuttal of, well, how do you have friends? Like, what if you don't have that community? What if you don't have safe people in your life? My honest response is, well, what lights you up? What are things that interest you? And how do you take initiative to build that? Because there are so many people who are looking for a connection and could take so much strength from your story and is wanting to offer that space.
Absolutely. And I think that's important that you mentioned that is it comes from within. Again, this whole effort, Operation Within, right, is you have to meet me halfway. I want to help you, and there's information, and I want to be that shoulder, and I want to be that, that sounding board for you, but you need to meet me halfway. Like, what's going on? Tell me what are you dealing with? And you need to be part of the solution as well. And I like, again, it's sometimes over the holidays, or a lot of times over the holidays, it's tough. I mean, hey man, I want to buy that nice TV, or I want to go on this trip. Maybe there isn't enough money, or maybe, hey, my parents are sick and I don't want to, give them COVID or whatever. I don't want to do something. Now it's panic. We don't know, right? We
Yeah.
don't know what
Well,
a simple trip is now. So
social connection has become so, like, there's so much around it now. And I think that in general, it's created, even if it's not conscious to people, there's this underlying pattern. After 3 months of being in fear around social connection, I mean, that turns into subconscious patterns. And so that's a whole other world of healing and navigating. But you're spot on with like this meeting yourself, the importance, and part of this, like with Operation Within, it is about self responsibility. And that's kind of nobody really wants to talk about that. I know it kind of sucks and it's hard to say, hey, like there is an aspect of self responsibility, especially when you're navigating hard things or you're getting into you're dealing with heavy weather. But at the end of the day, it really comes down to you meeting yourself. And I think that instead of making big goals or big, like, oh, I just need a community, but I don't know how to have a community, that's the stuff that keeps you stuck. If you want to build efficacy for yourself so you get motivated, it's like maybe you just reach out and social media to someone, or like you do a small thing. It's a bunch of little small things that can lead to eventually you'll look around and go, oh, wow, I have really amazing people around me.
you do, and we've mentioned a number of opportunities, like working, doing the mobile food distributions that we have at the Simi's YMCA, or at Soldiers Angels, or any of these events that are hosted by VSOs across town. Team Red, White, and Blue, Wear Blue, Run Remember. There's a number of organizations that provide these physical social service engagements, right? And that's a good first step, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially again during the holiday season. It's like, man, I'm kind of feeling a little down. I don't know what to do. Well, guess what? Tomorrow or Saturday or next week, there's a Soldiers Angels. There's a mobile food distribution. Go volunteer. Go meet some other folks and give back.
Yeah,
right?
there's so many
and
things
give
like
back.
that.
And I think that's a good step. And you remember Eric Cooper, Food Bank, San Antonio Food Bank, Mr. Eric Cooper talked about, volunteerism, right? And how that is part of that healing. And by the way, that was hands down. That was a love talking to that man because of what they have done for the entire San Antonio community through COVID, and even now a year after, and they're still out there just continuing to serve, the greater San Antonio community. And he does it with a smile, and they reach out to everyone. I've got another great story. I was at Haven for Hope.
Oh yeah,
Haven for Hope. They are part of San Antonio Food Bank, and we were out there and we volunteered. It was one of our Team Red, White, and Blue events, and I was making sandwiches. I was making bologna and cheese sandwiches. I made 1,000 sandwiches, right? And the chef on the shift, my counterpart Jessica, she was serving in the line, and Haven for Hope it's a homeless shelter, right? And they serve food and they house folks, and everybody has different things going on in their lives, right? At Haven for Hope, and but I was working sandwiches. I wasn't doing the line or anything like that. So I asked the chef, I'm like, hey man, what are these sandwiches for? He's like, well, these actually go out to different organizations, or they go to a prison, or they go to these shelters. What shelters? It's like, well, when, sometimes when the migrants are being processed, right? And kids and, whatever, they get families and kids, that are separated from their whatever situation they're going through. He's like, this is the sandwiches that they get when they put them on the bus and they send them back. And man, that blew me away. I'm like, wow, this is like the first meal or the last meal. I even wrote this long post on social media. This bologna sandwich is just like the first and last meal that this kid or this mom is ever going to get in the United States. And it just blew my mind. I'm thinking, wow, like
that is so beautiful. And I think that that's such a great example of how we pull meaning. Like part of what the healing is also connecting meaning, which is why I'm so big at doing, like, that's something that for me, like to be able to bring meaning to experiences. And so when you share that, it's like by doing different volunteer things or just contributing to these little things, it seems little, like you're just making a sandwich, but when you connect with the meaning of it, you realize that you're part of a bigger picture, and that your contribution, even though it might feel small, is actually so impactful.
Those were like the best sandwiches I've ever made in my life. And again, I'm reflecting back to Eric. We were talking about, their mission, their bigger mission is they're helping during COVID, and they give out turkeys, during Thanksgiving. That was actually cool. They were giving out actual turkeys to the first 100 folks in line, and folks are like, oh, am I going to get a turkey? But the ripple effect of his organization and what they're doing for the community, even just, again, in the United States, and even folks who don't even live here, it's just amazing that that's part of who we got to engage with. And it's like, man, how do you take that information and his motivation and his fire, your motivation, your fire, and how do I take that and apply it to my life? Man, it's a win. I'm like thinking that here it is, the end of the year, and I'm like, man, it's been a fantastic year. I couldn't have asked for more. It's been Christmas for the last 6 months.
Well, and I think that this is such a great example, talking about Eric Cooper or these different organizations. You got to remember, everything begins by an idea. Even Operation Within began as an idea. And, we've spent time and time again over the past, really before we started recording, problem solving or strategizing on ways to support the military, the communities, what initiatives need to be looked at, and like what we need to focus on. And I want to remind you guys, if you are listening to this and you've been listening to these episodes and there's something that doesn't exist yet that needs to be seen or addressed, start it. Like these desires or these things that inspire you, there's a reason it resonates, and I firmly believe that any desire that's planted in your heart, it's because there is a possibility of that being manifest. And it's so important that we listen to these little niggles of inspiration, because it all begins with an idea. And that maybe as we are moving into a new year, or maybe you're listening to this, in the middle of a year, but wherever you are, that at any time, you're a creator. And one thing also is that creation does not command creator. It's like we can wait all day for the creation to unfold, but nothing's going to happen. If you want something to happen, you have to take the initiative to create it, right? It's the creator who demands creation. And so I want to invite you to remember this, that what you perceive, you receive. And if you have a desire to serve in a way, but you're going, oh, well, no one's going to listen to me, no one cares, and you go into all these negative thought forms, that is the reality you're going to see. But if you have something planted in your heart, I mean, like when I came to San Antonio, I didn't know anybody. I took the initiative to, I did a lot of stuff for free. I did volunteer work, and then I connected with people. Then I hosted different things, and eventually I owned all these yoga studios. And I mean, it just happens over time. Like there's no shortcuts to this. But there's just dedication and continuing to create and continuing to show up. So, I don't believe in ceilings. It's like the community, I think a lot of issues too when it comes to, if we're going in systems, whether it's the military, whether it's even big organizations, there's so much red tape in a lot of these things that they really rely, whether they say it or not, they rely on the community as well to provide resources and to create solutions to problems, and that there's always room at the table for you as well to do this work.
There is. The one last thing that I want to, I guess, share is, so I've learned a bunch of stuff. I've learned forgiveness. I definitely learned forgiveness. What is it? Rise Recovery. That conversation you had with our awesome guest from Rise Recovery. That was powerful. And the audience, if you haven't listened to that episode, that podcast, I invite you. I'm telling you, it is definitely it is raw. It is probably one of the more raw episodes that we've had. But I tell you, that one really resonated with me as a listener, not as a participant in the interview, but just as a listener, man. And I was like, man, I've realized that I need to I need to forgive. Yeah, and there's things in our lives and people that sometimes we're like, man, I just can't do it. I can't do it. But I sent Mel this. I was listening to the episode, and I was on my way to Tennessee to support a Team Red, White, and Blue event. Again, whole different story for another conversation. And I was listening to the podcast at 4 a.m, and it's like, man, if the best time to reflect is when you're on your own, you're on a drive, or you're out on a run or a walk, right? Or you're out there at Landa Park feeding the duckies, or anywhere. But I'll tell you that the biggest lesson for me is like, hey, I know I'm almost I'm an older man, and I can still forgive. And I think that's I need to do that in order to move forward, right? We need to, in order for me to regain my joy, regain my happiness, is I need to be able to forgive and move on. Because we, as much as we maybe don't want to admit, we do hold on to grudges and hold on to those bad moments and experiences. And I know I have, and this podcast, this effort has really kind of opened my eyes to say, hey, maybe open my heart, say maybe I need to forgive, maybe I need to let go a little bit and start again, start fresh, start anew. Because you never know what that other person who has wronged you, you never know what they were going through that caused that interaction. So anyway, I thought that interview with him was fantastic.
Well, thank you for sharing. I mean, it's so big when we recognize within ourselves these things. It's liberating, and I think about in times in my life that if I've been wronged or betrayed or abandoned or hurt or whatever the situation is, that the lack of forgiveness actually keeps me in the cycle of narratives around them. And they probably have no idea. They're like living their life like just fine. And it's just like I'm going in these circles, and it just doesn't serve. One of the biggest illusions is that forgiveness is that like it needs the other person to be involved, or that like to have closure, we need another person. Because most closure, even with if you have another person there, oftentimes it never doesn't go the way you want, and you're still lingering in it. That forgiveness and closure, it really is a consciousness and a choice that we make within ourselves. And it's literally, I think there's a physical aspect too of just like stretching the body, releasing it from the body, sighing it out, crying it out. Yeah.
Crying it out. Yeah. And I know, I mean, I'll be honest, I think I've cried more in these last 6 months than I have in a long, long time. It's like, why am I crying? Why am I, and it's like big, fat, ugly tears. But it's just, I think it's healthy. I think it is healthy to kind of let go. And these long drives, right, and the opportunity to travel across country has given me the opportunity to really kind of reflect and just recognize that it hasn't all been bad. It's been pretty good. And okay, now we're gonna move forward and learn from this experience. But so we're winding down, man. This has been it's been well over a half hour now. And I knew our discussions they just
good,
flow, right? So the two things that I'll leave the audience with, and again, I want to just thank you, Mel, and the audience for listening to our conversations. These are, again, we unscripted. We genuinely speak from the heart. And we hope that a word, a quote, an experience, a story, and I love telling stories because that's, I think, how I communicate with folks. But I hope one of our stories or experiences has resonated with you. And I hope that has given you the ability to kind of, find your joy or reclaim your joy if you were missing it. And I hope it moves you to action. I really does, because it's moved me to action. And I know that every time I talk to somebody, it's like, okay, that was kind of cool. I want to make more sandwiches. Like I'm serious. I want to make more sandwiches, and I want to volunteer more when I can get time. But two things that I will absolutely take away from these first 6 months, right, is Kimberly Anderson, the director of wellness for Endeavor, she talked about standing in the gap, right? All of us have the ability to stand in the gap and be that pillar of hope and resilience for people who need that pillar of hope and resilience, right? All of us can stand in that gap for family, friends, service members, your kids. So be mindful that you do have that power to make change and impact change in someone's life. And then Dr. Ogletree from the American Heart Association talked about don't crowd your life, right? Because he talked about a lot of our stressors a lot of our anxiety, a lot of our, it's really about how much are we putting on on ourselves. Like, man, I got to fill my day, and I've got 1,000 things I got to get done. His advice was, don't crowd your life. Right? Try to remove some of those things that you have to do and create that space, right? Going back to you, create that white space and just have the freedom to, I want to go fishing. I want to go for a walk. I want to just kind of do something that doesn't require somebody else. It's not on somebody's schedule. Man, those two things are like, wow. And I have them written down, and I'm going to keep using those as motivators, because all of us have the ability to stand in the gap, and all of us are conscious about how we crowd our lives and what we kind of bring in our lives. But anyway, so it's been fun. And again, so I'll throw it to you and bring us home, and we can wrap this up.
Okay, so when I think about my favorite, or like just things that have really stood out, I think of Wendy Fish. I think that was our first episode, and she had shared her profound story and just about finding your significance. But she talked about, if you don't know what you're passionate about, look at what's on your bookshelf. And that actually awakened, because I find this, like, that's my most, like, when someone says, well, I don't know what I like in life. Like, because I do a lot of mentoring, right? And when people tell me that they're like, I don't know what I want, I don't know what I like, I'm like, how do you not know what you like? Like, that's such a hard question for me, because I don't know what you like if you don't know what you like. So when she said, look on your bookshelf, that made me realize, like, and it's changed almost the way that I coach people when that shows up, is if you look at what's on your bookshelf, you look at the podcast you listen to, you go look at what you own in your home. Where do you spend a lot of your time? Like, there's so many things that are right in front of you that is your passion and are things that light you up, that are totally your guides. Like, it's they're stepping stones back into your alignment, essentially. So I love that. Armando's episode from Rise Recovery definitely felt like church for me, to be honest. Like, I mean, I cried in that episode. It was so profound, the whole thing, and just the strength. And also, I think that it's interesting with all of our guests, there's been this theme of breaking down that barrier of performance versus beingness, and the realness and the humanness. And it's just over and over again given permission, at least for me, to really honor my story and, remind you guys to honor your story, that, there's not failure in life. Any type of rejection is really protection. It really is. It's just redirecting you back into a different way. And it's been amazing to see people share stories that model that. And I think that it helps lay down fear around failure or trying things, or, giving something a chance. Nigel and I talked about that. Like, he talked about our belief around glass, for example. Like, if we think it's going to break, then we're all awkward and fragile with it. I mean, I just love that. Like, when you start to think about, well, like, what if and then renegotiating our thoughts. So yeah, there's just so many gems, and there's
so many, you're right. And again, and I don't know, again, so we're winding down the year. So this is, this is possibly our final discussion of the year of 2021. I don't know, again, to be determined.
Yeah.
Because it is a holiday. I mean, we're
yeah.
2 weeks from the new year. And we'll see where Operation Within and how this matures in the following year. But this has been fantastic, Mel, and I appreciate all of your words of wisdom.
Of course. It finally came to me, because you're saying, like, you shared forgiveness, you learned forgiveness. Yeah. So I learned self-trust. And the reason is just through this experience, it's like, it's easy, I think, for all of us, even, Marty's so sweet. He says so many nice things about me, but I'm human just like y'all. And I think that, especially stepping into this role and in other ways, you don't want to let people down, or you have instincts and intuition about things, but then we doubt them. And I really committed in the beginning of this to show up in my fullness and not hold back, and to really be in that. And like, it's shown, at least for me, it's been kind of like, because I think trust is a byproduct of patterns. essentially that's what trust is, right? And so just doing again and again and developing the self-trust, and listening and having conversations on self-trust and seeing people mirror that back to me. So I would say that's what a lot of this year has been in general, because, going back to what I said, it's like if you have a vision or you want to support something, the first step is to ask, to reach out, to take initiative. Like, it's your initiation to initiate, and I mean that if you think about that, like break that down. It's an initiation to initiate, and it's uncomfortable. It's scary, but trust yourself, because you never know the beauty on the other side.
So when I publish my book, when I write my book, I'm going to ask you to write the foreword to my book.
I would be honored.
Okay, great. So those are the kind of nuggets. That's what I mean, is you take away after all of our discussions. But it's been fun. This has been a blast. And again, we appreciate all of you kind of listening in and just taking your time to trust us, right, with our stories and our experiences. And again, we hope that these conversations have lifted you and have kind of, given you a sense of purpose, right, and kind of awakened some that spiritual side of you to say, hey, I can do this, and start healing from within.
Beautiful. Thank you, Marty, for everything.
Yeah, thank you, Mel. And guys, hey, until next episode, again, you can listen to all of our past episodes on Spotify. You can follow us on social media, Facebook, Instagram, anywhere that you can download a podcast. And truly, I invite you over the holidays when you get some downtime, truly check out some of our first episodes. We were a little nervous, but it's okay. I think we still did a good job, and kind of listening to some of the more in-depth, more serious ones, and then I definitely want to listen to the one where I give everybody a car if I win $1 million.
Oh, that's hilarious. That's true.
The money episode.
I know. When you caught me off, he asked me like on the spot, "What'd you do with $1 million?" Like, wait, I have to think about this. Hold on.
Yep. I spent it in seconds. I'm like, everybody's getting a Hyundai. But anyway, no, we appreciate it. And anyway, so all of you, please enjoy the holidays. Please stay safe. If you need to reach out to folks, again, stand in the gap, right? If you know someone, if you have a neighbor, a buddy, a friend, and you know that they're having a tough time, give them a call. Go invite them for a coffee, invite them for a walk. Just, again, be the change, right? We are all capable of, of standing in the gap. So again, with that, just keep it simple. Don't forget to eat. Don't forget to smile. And we will talk to you guys soon. Take care.